Hi, I'm Gary LeBlanc, the founder and president of Mercy Chefs. Thank you for your interest in volunteering with us. By now, I hope you've had a chance to look at our website and you know a little bit about who we are and about what we do. We feed people, body and soul. I've asked Chef Fred Tees, one of America's preeminent chefs and culinary instructors, to share some information with you, some things that you're going to need to know and do when you volunteer with us at Mercy Chefs.
One of the most important things as far as working within Mercy Chefs is making sure that the food that we serve is safe. We're going into environments where people have lost everything, and the last thing we want to do is to get them ill from our products. One of the major issues is poor personal habits, hygiene, and that's really where you come in as far as your proper handling of the food. So throughout these segments, we're really going to chat about how this affects you, how your personal hygiene might affect the dishes and the food that we're preparing. One of the other major reasons why is inadequate holding temperatures as far as the hot food. So to make sure that we serve food that is hot, that is safe, we have holding cabinets. And these holding cabinets will hold the food above 145 degrees for a period of 5 to 6 hours. One of the things that you're also going to be involved with is the cleaning of the equipment. So throughout these series of videos, we're going to talk about how important it is for you to clean the equipment properly, and even more important than cleaning and sanitizing is storing everything in the proper place so that we're ready to go for the next day. We want to make sure that what we're doing is when we get ready to come and participate with Mercy Chefs is prepare ourselves properly before we come. So that day of, make sure you're taking a good shower. Make sure that we have our face nicely trimmed and clean before we come in. Ladies, you want to make sure that you go ahead, if you have long hair, go ahead and tie your hair back into a bun to keep it away from your face. Put on some clean clothes. So, jeans are always great as far as, a good durable fabric to use. You can wear t-shirts in the summertime if you want to. And of course you want to wear a longer sleeve shirt than the wintertime. That's perfectly fine. So we want you to do that, and also prepare yourself as far as your skin. If you think it's going to be a really sunny day, go ahead and pre-apply some suntan lotion before you get here so you don't have to do that throughout the day and get your hands all messed up with that. Make sure that you're wearing good rubber-soled shoes. Leather shoes are preferred. Please do not wear sandals or flip-flops. Again, you're working in an environment where there might be some hot grease. We don't want that stuff spilling onto your feet and then damaging in any way. So when we're done with preparing, we've come into our Mercy Chef's kitchen. The first thing we want to always do is to wash our hands off. And we'll talk about hand washing throughout these segments. So let's go ahead and show you how to wash your hands properly. All of our kitchens have a hand washing area that's equipped with a sink, with a nice little soap dispenser, and with some paper towels as well. So the first thing you want to do when you get in and wash your hands off is go ahead and turn on some warm water and then start getting your hands nicely wet. Go ahead and give yourself a couple taps of some nice soapy water and work up a good lather. So if you sing happy birthday 2 or 3 times to yourself, that's about 15 or 20 seconds of hand washing. Then go ahead and rinse your hands off. And shake it off and go ahead and get yourself a paper towel. Then turn your water off first with a paper towel. Then dry your hands off really well. One of the things you want to make sure of that if you have any cuts on your fingers, if your nails are long, you want to make sure your nails are trimmed back. And then if you have any cuts on your fingers, you want to always wear a Band-Aid and also to wear a glove on top of that as well. So now our hands are nice and dry. We want to go ahead and put our gloves on. When you're putting the gloves on, you can go and just kind of stretch them out a little bit. Go and find where the thumb is as far as the glove. Slide them in and push it down. Make sure they fit really comfortably. We have different sizes if you need those. So now you're ready to start touching some food if you need to. Now the problem is you're in the midst of working with some food and you got to sneeze or you got to cough. So a little trick that we do is we just use our shoulder. So if we have to sneeze, we'll just go like this and sneeze into our shoulder. If we have to cough, same thing. Just go ahead and cough to the side. And then if you do recognize you've gotten anything on yourself as far as your hands, you want to go ahead and change out your gloves and of course wash your hands off as well. If you get a little itch, a good way of doing that is just go ahead and grabbing a towel and then go ahead and just scratch that side of your face as far as if you have a little itch. But don't touch your face with your gloved hands. So now that we've prepared ourselves properly to begin working in our kitchens and also in our work areas, there's 3 things we have to be really careful of to make sure they don't get into our food. These are called contaminants. The first one is like a physical contaminant. This could be as simple as an eyelash, it could be a hair, it could be fingernails. Remember, our kitchens are mobile and sometimes things become a little bit too mobile. The screws tend to fall out sometimes. So be careful that these don't wind up in the food. One of the things we can be really careful of as far as another type of contaminant is a chemical contaminant. And this would be things like soaps and bleach and degreasers. We don't want to store these anywhere near our food. So for that reason, we actually store those below the sink away from all of our food products. Keep those always away from the food. And the last type of contaminant is biological. And people think biological contaminant, what's the biggest possible problem that can happen? Well, it's usually us. So we make sure that after we've washed our hands, we prepare ourselves, that as we're working through the food, we don't want to have any more contaminants going into it. And that's one of the reasons why we try to use the gloves. And people always ask, so when do you glove and when don't you glove? Really important to remember that if your hands are going to touch the food, you want to make sure that your hands are gloved. If it's, for instance, if you're utilizing a spoon or a tongue, and your hands are keeping away from the food, you don't have to really wear gloves at that point. Most of the time when you're dishing up, we're going to have everybody wear gloves anyway. But say if you're mixing something up real quick, you don't have to put gloves on if you're not touching the food. So very important to remember that as well. So what is a ready-to-eat food? That's something, take like an apple, you can pick up with your hands and go ahead and eat that. If we are putting whole apples into our boxes, we'll make sure we're wearing gloves to do that. Food that's not ready to eat, we're going to be cooking it. If it's at any point, if it's raw, particularly things like raw chicken, we can work with raw chicken with our hands. But before we move on to doing anything else, we're going to make sure to clean our hands properly. And there's many different reasons after you use your gloves why you want to go ahead and to clean your hands. So say if you have to take the trash out, we want to make sure that you take the trash out, you take off your gloves, take the trash out, wash your hands off, and put fresh gloves on before you come back. If you do have an itch, you do need to scratch, take off your gloves, scratch your face, go wash your hands off, the same thing. So key thing is whenever the gloves are not touching the food, the gloves need to come off your hand if it's going to be possibly touching anything else. If you are wearing gloves and you have to go to the restroom, one of the things you want to do is discard those gloves first, go to the restroom, do what you need to do, wash your hands off in the restroom, dry them off, come on back, and the first thing you want to do is go back to our sink and go ahead and wash your hands off again. You don't know if your hand bumps something on the way in. You want to also re-glove in between tasks. So if I were cutting up some melon, I'll take my gloves off, discard them, wash my hands off, dry them, then go back and I have to cut some onions up. I'm going to reapply and also go ahead and do some onions if I'm topping off some onions on top of our chili. So definitely in between tasks, you want to make sure that you are changing out the gloves as well. Gloves shouldn't be on your hands for a long period of time. Another reason would be if you're washing some pots and pans. You've come into the kitchen to wash off some pots and pans. Take off your gloves, wash the pots and pans, put those away, and then go back to your station and go ahead and reapply some gloves. So there are reasons why we want to go ahead and change out the gloves. We don't want to be poor stewards of all the gloves. There are certain times we do need to wear them and certain times we don't need to wear them. So say we just use the station. It's real important that before we do our next task that we get the station properly cleaned and then also sanitized. So what we're going to do is we're going to move our knife and our cutting board put over here in their dish sink to be cleaned up later on. And we've got some soapy water over here. We're going to go ahead and scrub down the station really well, first off. And this might be a stainless steel table. It might also be one of the plastic tables we have underneath the tents. All those surfaces need to be cleaned really well. Once we get that cleaned off, we can go and get a towel and wipe it off, get all the soap out of the way. And then we're going to start to go ahead and sanitize it. So we use for our sanitizer simple bleach solution. This is 200 parts per million for a gallon of water. So for every gallon of water, for the 200 parts per million, you would add 2 teaspoons of liquid bleach to the water. And to apply this, you're simply going to spray this right on top of the table over here. Light mist on there. And then use a paper towel to go ahead and wipe it all off. Work it into it for a second. And then make sure you dry it off really well before you start your next task. Now that we're ready to begin working, we're going to be taking our food from some place, might be on a boarded truck in a storeroom, and bringing it into our mobile kitchen or into our workstations. One of the last things we want to do is take a case of product and put it onto the ground. Because we put it on the ground, now we've contaminated the bottom of that. If that case was on the ground, now all those contaminants are now on top of our surfaces. If we have products that are shelf stable, like dried spices, they can go back on a shelf. If we have items like we have this bag of rice, we open up this bag of rice, we want to go ahead and reseal this, just a little twist tie in there, reseal that so we can use that again and put the caps back on top of things like oil. If we have things that are like canned products, like this container of beef broth over here, we'll open it up, but once this is open, this has to be refrigerated, because if it isn't, the rest of it's going to go spoil. So when opening up boxes, we want to do is go ahead and lift it up first and cut through all the plastic over here and then straight on down. Be careful not to cut into the product as you're doing it. And we notice that this is a case now of our aluminum pans that we use for a lot of our products. If we're taking a few of the pans out, we don't want to leave this container open, because again, someone's walking by, they might spill something in there. So go back and close it back up again. So when you're ready to go, you're closing it all back up again. So these are really not potentially hazardous right now, because they're shelf stable. So what are potentially hazardous foods? These are generally raw or frozen products that when they get into our environment between our room temperature, they become hazardous. So take for instance beef jerky versus raw beef. Beef jerky you buy in a convenience store, yeah, you can eat that and that's perfectly fine. But take raw beef and try to eat that, you might get sick from that as well. So we'll make that food really safe. And this is one of the principles that we're going to use to make sure that our food is stored properly under refrigeration. One of the concerns we have is something that's called cross-contamination. We have things like chicken. If we're working with chicken with our hands, we talked about this, that we have chicken with our hands and we don't glove our hands or wash our hands. We get that chicken blood now onto some melon. We've got some big problems. People are going to get really sick. That goes back to where you store product in the fridge as well. So you want to generally store product in the fridge where you have things that are ready to eat on the top shelf. So here we have some beverages. We've got some produce on the next shelf. You could eat these. These are potentially, you can eat these from the raw state. Where you're getting to some of the more items that can go bad a lot quicker. So things like we have some sausage over here and we have some chicken. Definitely things like chicken we want to put on the bottom shelf. Think about it. If it can be served raw, we can serve it generally pretty cold. And then the temperature ranges. So if we are storing multiple meat items in this fridge and we have maybe some eggs on top and then we have some beef in the middle, then maybe the chicken that's on the bottom. The beef doesn't have to be cooked to 165 degrees. It only has to reach 145 degrees. So therefore we can put that beef into the middle part of the fridge and always putting our chicken on the bottom of the fridge to avoid any cross-contamination whatsoever. These aren't just there to look pretty as far as our sleeves. These have a purpose. These are our thermometers. We use our thermometers all the time to check the temperature of our refrigerators and also of our products. So what we always do is when we have a trailer that's full of refrigerated product, we're not going to take this thermometer and put it right into the food. We're always going to keep a bottle of water in the refrigerator because this is something that's fairly easy to go ahead and take a temperature of rather quickly. So we open up the bottle of water and go ahead and turn on the thermometer. We can try to check and see what temperature our product is at right now. We see that this is actually in the temperature danger zone, 65 degrees. So if this product were going to be served, we would definitely want to go through that and probably throw that away because that's in the temperature danger zone. Say if this refrigerator had gone down overnight, all the product that's in there, we have to make sure we get rid of that. It's one of the reasons why we're always checking the temperatures with these thermometers. So now that we've got some leftover product we want to store, it's really important to cover, label, and date that product. Here we've labeled up our raw chicken breast over here with our date on it. So to put this into a bag, we want to try to minimize our contact with our hand. Open it up, pull it back a little bit, insert the chicken breast with a pair of tongs over here. Go ahead and seal it all up. We want to store this in our refrigerator, the bottom of the refrigerator. We want to go ahead and store the chicken now in the bottom of the fridge. Make sure it's nice and safe. The refrigerator should always be below 40 degrees to make sure our food products are always nice and safe. So one of the safety things we have to be concerned with is how to take food properly out of the oven. You want to make sure that you use nice dry towels, open the door up, and then pull your product out. Always 2 hands and 2 side towels to pull it out. Then put it on a nice secure place to go ahead and check the temperature of it. We'll close the door over here. If there's people around you as far as the kitchen, and you're taking something hot that's out of the oven, say hot behind you so they understand where you are as far as their proximity. We're taking temperature now. We've just cleaned off our thermometer. We're going to insert it into the thickest, widest part. We see our chicken is above 165 degrees, so now it's safe to eat. At certain points throughout the service, we have to make sure the food is remaining at the proper temperatures. So we're going to use a clean thermometer once again. This is our holding cabinet that we hold our food in, and go ahead and find the thickest, widest part of the chicken. Let's go ahead and check it to make sure that it is above 140 degrees as far as the holding temperature. And we see that that has been achieved already. So when we have food that was ready to eat, we want to make sure we go ahead and we just we're going to wash this off. And then we're going to go ahead and, once it's washed, we're going to go put our gloves on. So same thing as far as putting the gloves on. Slide your hand in. We never want to have food served that's been in contact with our hands but it's ready to eat. Here's a prime example. If I were to have chicken on my hands and we're cutting up chicken, and didn't wash my hands off a few minutes ago and came over here and touched this melon, even by touching the outside of it, the whole thing is now contaminated. We'd have to throw the whole thing away. So that's one of the reasons why we'll make sure we're always washing off of our fruits and vegetables before we begin cutting. And we talk about safe foods and utilizing nice produce. We use a lot of produce in Mercy Chefs because a lot of times this is the first time someone has had some good produce for a couple of days since the beginning of the incident. There's food that we want to serve with what's called out of the temperature danger zone. So the temperature danger zone is between 41 degrees and 140 degrees. We don't want to serve food in that temperature range because of the fact that it has a more likely chance of growing bacteria. Who wants to have melon that's served at like 80 or 90 degrees? It's not going to be very enjoyable. Who wants to have a nicely sauteed chicken that's served at 90 degrees either. It's not very tasty. So beyond the safety purposes, there's also another reason to make it enjoyable for our customers. Now that our food is cooked properly at the right temperature, we're going to need to serve the food to our customers. So what we do is a process called slide and pass. The chefs will show you how much food to put on each of the plates. And what you'll be doing is taking the food, putting it exactly in the same way that the chef showed you how to do that, and passing it to the person that's next to you. They'll take it and keep that process going. Now that our guests are served, it's time to start cleaning up. So here's the fun part of the day as far as cleaning up all our pots and pans. The thing we want to do is always to remove all the debris first from a pan. So we don't want to get all this stuff into the soapy water. A lot of times the water that we're using is coming from, it's a really hard to source that, whether it's bottled water or even from being supplied from like water buffaloes, the big water tanks. So we're trying to minimize our use of water as well, but to use it wisely. So we've got all of our food off now and all the fat off. We can go ahead and get that into the trash. We're going to take these and let this soak for a few minutes in on our soapy water. So you want to keep your soapy water about 100 degrees. All of our kitchens come with hot water heaters right down below over here. That's going to allow the soapy water to be at the right temperature to get the food off and also to break down those particles. Now that the pan is soaked for a few seconds, go ahead and pull it out. And then you can use this shelf right over here as support. And then it's nice small circles to get all the food debris off of these pans. Scrape all the suds back into the soapy bin. This way you can see where the product is still soiled. Go back over, see this part over here needs a little more attention. You want to keep these pans as clean as possible. You want to keep the pans clean and keep the kitchen clean for a long time. You never know when we're going to be leaving as far as deployment or going on to the next service. So now that the pan is nice and clean, we give a quick little rinse over here. Just remove the suds. Then fully submerge it now into our rinse sink. So this should be again about 100 degrees as well as far as the temperature of the water. You want to remove all the suds from your pan. And then the last step, one of the last two steps here, is the sanitation of the pan. So what we want to do is to make sure the pan is totally sanitary, ready for the next use, is we're going to put it into this bath. This bath is bleach and water. It is 100 parts per million. So this allows, as it sits in there for 10 to 15 seconds, this allows anything that might still be left on it to be taken off as far as bacterial problems. But having gone through the process, this is really just kind of a precaution. It's a requirement as far as our health codes. We never know when we're going to be inspected by a health inspector. So make sure you know all the processes as far as how the pans are cleaned as well. After it's been there 15-20 seconds at least, pull this out. Then you want to air dry these. So it's going to go upside down for a period of time. We can either leave them over here, we can actually even use a speed rack. We can put all that product on there and allow that to drain off properly to get, there's no moisture left. We want to avoid any kind of moisture left in our pans because, again, that could be an opportunity for mold to grow. If our pan's being left in an environment for a day or so, you can actually grow some mold spores on it just from the ambient environment that we're in.
By paying attention to the steps that Chef Fred showed you in this video, you can serve a much more sanitary and healthy meal to the people that we serve. Your dedication, your time, your effort will make the difference in the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. Don't forget to fill out the volunteer application. Thank you again for serving with us. Look forward to spending some time with you in the field. God bless.